Hi,
Morning.
good morning.
I'm sorry, I'm eating.
It's okay.
I'm gonna try to pull up the questions so you can see what we're looking at.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hey, Vicky.
Oh, you put the paper up. That's convenient.
You think that's easier?
It makes it clear what you're saying, so that helps.
I'm hoping Edgar remembers this paper.
I think I interviewed, I don't remember who I interviewed.
Did you do it on YTech?
I either did it on YTech or I did it at my at a nonprofit.
Oh,
But if I'm assuming I probably did it at YTech,
okay, cool. So hopefully it'll come back. And
maybe.
there's a million questions. We are definitely not going to ask you all the questions. We tried to like highlight the most important ones because I was like, this guy's busy and who knows whatever could happen on the unit at any time.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just introduce everybody. Let me stop this, sorry. Okay, so these are my partners, Vicky Fuller and Stephen Liu. This is Edgar Camacho.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.
Edgar has been mentoring me since I started internship, so he's a really good resource for anything. You guys have any questions, he can help you with anything, honestly. And he went to,
I was thinking this morning, how long have you been there?
So I went to Cal State San Bernardino for my master's. I graduated in 2019, but I did my internship here at YTech. So my second year internship, 2018 to 19. And then I got hired on afterwards. And so I've been here since then. So
Oh,
technically 2019 to now as employed, but 18 to now with 1 year internship.
right. That's a lot of experience.
for sure, for sure. Okay, if you guys don't have any other opening comments, I'll go back to sharing my screen. Is that okay? Okay. Okay, so the topic is interprofessional practice. We're interviewing you as a social worker to share your experience as part of an interprofessional team as you care for your clients. And the beginning questions are really just like, what is YTech about? And I kind of just gave them what I know based on working with you. And so the first one we would jump to is number 5, but I wonder if you just briefly, Edgar, you could just describe to these guys what it is you do and who you serve, just from your perspective.
Okay. So YTech is a juvenile justice placement. We are one of the options that you have after they are in juvenile halls. So they get arrested for a crime and then they get tried. And then the court decides, this youth needs further treatment. And so they have a lot of options of where to send them. We are a lockdown placement. So it's facilitated through probation, and they come here, and the setup is similar to a juvenile hall, but they have a lot more focus on their treatment. So they have behavioral health, which is us, and they do individual therapy with us once a week. They do multiple groups with us, and then they also do probation-led groups, all in the efforts to help reduce recidivism among the youth, and hopefully they don't return back to the system. And that's really much what we do. So it's a 6-month program. and they have to complete all their requirements of programming before they are eligible to be released.
So they could theoretically not finish at 6 months, then you're saying? They don't finish?
They could do more than 6 months. So a lot of it is dependent on behavior, a lot of it is dependent on their progression, and how they're progressing within the program. So it arguably someone could be here more than 6 months.
Okay.
Okay, so the first question we have is, in terms of diversity between the team, so I'm imagining treatment team, and the clients, how similar or different are they?
In terms of how similar are the people working for
Yeah,
like
like,
the actual youth? I think it depends. It depends on like everything, it just depends. So the population we serve tends to be minority youth, so it tends to be African American and Latino youth, predominantly Latino, and then African American, and then everything else is minimal. Staff, it fluctuates, so sometimes they're similar, sometimes they're not. Just like it just depends on the unit. So maybe some unit will have more people of color, some might not. So I know in terms of the therapist, I'm Latino and I speak Spanish, so then that's a similarity there. My unit in particular, I would say is pretty diverse. So the facility is divided into units. So on the unit I work on, which is the beta unit, I would say it's pretty diverse based on who's working here with the youth.
and I get the impression a lot of the probation staff are from California, from Southern California, kind of know the area the youth are from. Is that correct?
I think it depends. I also don't know personal lives of staff members. So I wouldn't be able to tell you, but a lot of them live in the area, or a lot of them are from here. I do know that much. So just again, it depends. Some people are similar, some are not.
And what about gender? It's a facility for young men, right?
Yes, it's a facility for young men. Right now we do have staff with both genders. And so we have both. Sometimes I think right now maybe we have a little bit more female, but I don't want to say that for sure. It just depends. You also have to keep in mind that our facility, when you work at a facility with juveniles like this, and when you work in a juvenile justice, specifically like the justice area of things, it is there's an extensive and difficult background check that you have to clear. So it is a minimum of a 3-month background check where they're checking you, and they dive into a lot of your life, a lot of invasive questions. They go back to where you've lived, where you grew up, like, so they ask a lot of questions. So there's that.
You know, maybe we should back up the actual team, question number 3, the team that you're on, or I don't know exactly how this works, your unit maybe, or they're talking about the team. We put nurse, psychiatrist, probation, behavioral health. Does that
That's
seem
correct. That's
okay?
correct. Yeah. So our interagency team includes behavioral health, which is us. It includes nursing. It includes the school. It includes the psychiatrist is part of behavioral health, so I count them as us. So it's medical, behavioral health, probation, RCOE, which is school, and that's pretty much the 4 main interagencies that are working with each other. There could be instances where DPSS, right? If we have a youth who is in foster care, they would be involved. And so that would, in that instance, they would also be a part of our interagency team. There could be instances where a youth has an active CPS case for one of their own children. And so that would be an active part in that instance. So the main four again would be medical, behavioral health, probation, and school. But if there's something about a client's particular case, then we would have more.
So that's what I was wondering too, like, so back to question 5, the diversity on that specific team. I feel like we're supposed to probably just talk about your team, right?
You're supposed to ask what?
We're supposed to mostly be asking about your team. So the diversity between the people who work and the population of the young men. I think that's what we're supposed to be talking about, right?
Yes, I
Or
think
is it the whole facility?
everything he said still applies because everyone that works there has to do that strict background check, and it does make it harder for people like with lived experience. I mean, my mind goes to like, there's no former gang members working there because they couldn't get through background. So it kind of limits who can work there in terms of like
So like
mirroring the
a
population.
great example is our substance use counselors. We have a difficult time getting a substance use counselor because a lot of substance use counselors have lived experience. So substance use counselors tend to go into that field because they've lived through it. They understand it. They know what it's like to be a person who uses substances. And so a lot of times it's hard to get someone through a background check if they have that extensive substance use, right? So that does affect maybe a little bit the diversity of the substance use counselors, for example. But we just, at that point, we find substance use counselors who, and that's not to say we can't get someone with experience, but it tends to be someone with a lot of years in sobriety, a lot of years practicing, a lot of years far away from their substance use history, from their lived experience. So there's that aspect of things.
Sorry, didn't mean to slow it down, Carrie. I know we're trying to be keeping one eye on the clock for you.
No worries. This place is really fascinating, so I don't blame you. I still have a million questions, so it's pretty cool there. Okay. Contrary to what people think. All right. Moving on, who's in charge? So when we have all these people working with the youth, who really is in charge? Who's in power? What do you think?
So this is, I would say probation. So this is a juvenile justice facility. So the chair or the people who are in charge would really be probation. And I think what we really have to focus on is that there's a strong focus on safety and security, right? So we're still working in an environment that is, that can be a bit dangerous because we are working with individuals who may be incarcerated, who are still working on impulse. It depends, right? So the focus here is safety and security because it is a lockdown placement, I think is a better way to frame that. So since we're in a lockdown placement, probation are the ones that lead, right? So they lead the safety aspect of it. There's cameras everywhere, right? So they are the ones who lead the late day to day. So for example, we can start, like they can stop movement within the facility. So if there's a code, right? If there's a fight between youth, if there's a youth escalating, if whatever that may be, then they take over in that instance and they say, hey, we're stopping movement, you stay on the unit, don't move around, right? Because they have to be able to get medical in. Or if it's a thing that behavioral health can de-escalate. So say I'm on the unit, I'm in this office, right? And then there's a fight that breaks out. If I have a youth who is my client and I have good rapport with them, maybe the best option is for me to step out and say, hey, let me talk to you. What's going on? Like, come on, come back to my office. Let's, right? So we can help de-escalate. But in terms of who leads the facility, we would say probation, because this is their placement, right? It's through the court. But every team has an important perspective that is valid and it's important to listen to.
Thank you. Sounds good. Just trying to touch on budget and resource issues. How do budgetary and resource issues maybe affect the functioning of YTech?
Everyone has their own budget. So I wouldn't be able to tell you what probation's budget is, or I wouldn't be able to tell you what nursing's budget is. So everyone has their own budget that they work through. And I think an important thing about budgets at a facility level is that budget is not just the spending money that you have, right? It's also my salary is budgeted, right? My position is budgeted. We're budgeted, just say 8 therapists and 2 behavioral health specialists and a clinical supervisor, right? And so we have to offer all the services with the staff that is provided. And so if it goes beyond that, then you have to ask for permission from the county, right? So we're all county entities that work here. But again, everyone has their own budget. And so we have budget, for example, for snacks, or we have budget for meals. So some of the programs that we do have an incentive of a meal from outside of the facility. And that's engraved into the evidence-based practice. So that group is MRT, moral recognition therapy. And part of the evidence-based practice is that they get a meal twice throughout the group, one after session 7 and one after session 12. And that is budgeted in. But it's important to keep in mind your budget throughout the fiscal year. And the fiscal year for the county is in July, so it restarts in July. So it's important to know all that.
That was moral recognition.
Recognition, it's a made-up word.
You guys have any other follow-up questions on that? Number 8?
Yeah, does the budget ever get reviewed or every year, and like does
There's an option. So the supervisor here, the behavioral health services supervisor, he would see, okay, we need more money this year because of this. So then they justify it to the county, and then the county decides if we get more money. So there's an option to revisit it. But if your budget was good throughout the year, then you could probably just leave it the same. But again, that's above my position. From my understanding, that's how it would work.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
You do feel like it's substantial enough, or do you feel like there's any lack from your observation?
In what way?
Well, I just mean, do you feel like you have everything you need?
I mean, I think that's such an objective question, right? Do we have everything we need? Yeah, we have everything we need, but sometimes you may want additional stuff. You may want additional resources, right? So there's always going to be something that you wish you could have. I think right now we're at a good place with the budget. And it's just making the budget work for you and your facility and your unit.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Okay, moving on, number 10. Let's skip it for time. We want to get the really hard ones. This is a good one because I mentioned to Edgar yesterday that he's talked to me about this issue a lot, and there's still a lot to learn about this one. What particular ethical considerations relate to the functioning of this group or team? For example, how does the team manage informed consent and confidentiality?
So we have, working in this placement, we have a blanket permission to speak with one another. So we're able to communicate freely with probation. We're also able to communicate freely with nursing. We're also able to communicate freely with school. But that does not mean that we get to disclose personal information, right? So ethically, I am more reserved, and I think Carrie would be able to back that up in that I share minimal information, right? So say example, you have a kid who comes in and is having a really bad relationship with family, and they disclose to you all this stuff, like of the dynamics of the family. You can share, right, with probation or with nursing, like, hey, this, and this is happening at home. Or you could share more stuff like, there's difficult family dynamics and we're working on that in family session. So that is still maintaining the client's confidentiality, because you could say, oh, there's a history of abuse. You could say that, but then you say, oh yeah, mom used to beat him like this, right? So there's differences in how you disclose information and what you disclose and when you disclose, right? Obviously, you do your mandated reporting, all of that. But you also have to keep in mind the client's confidentiality as you are working through things, right? So and there's stuff that you just have to be careful in what you share, right? Because the clients also have their confidentiality that you should be respecting. If it is something that the client is sharing and the client wishes to share with people, then maybe that is something that you share a little bit more. But I go through discussions with the client. So I even do concurrent notes with my youth. So my case notes, so my documentation is done with the youth in the room. We sit down on the screen and I bring up my form where I document and I let them know like, hey, I'm gonna do your note. All the therapists do notes here. You meet with us and you sit down here, do our therapy session, then we go back to our office and we write. I like to have that be more with you. So you know what I am writing about you and you know what is on your record. So if it ever gets asked for, you know, okay, Edgar said this, this, and this. And so just that everyone has their own style. There's no right or wrong way to do that, but I tend to side on the things of confidentiality is important, and clients also have confidentiality within their notes, right? Within the documentation of their notes, they also have confidentiality. So keep stuff in mind like that. Obviously, you're never going to lie. You're never going to do anything like that, but you're also going to, yeah.
Thank you. That's helpful. And just to remind these guys, so some of these clients have done pretty serious crimes too. And usually they don't talk about their crimes, but you just have to be aware, I think, and because of the gang affiliations, even for them, there's a lot of caution. They try to protect a lot of information themselves. That's what I find.
Yeah, so the youth here are very smart. They know how not to incriminate themselves, right? So it's again, you have to see, right, what's going on, right? And you have to see how what they're sharing and what you share. Because they have that right to privacy.
Yeah. Yes, and we are not the police. I'm not the police. Okay, number 14 is about measuring outcomes. How do we do this? How would you recommend it should be done? What are your thoughts?
So I think the important outcomes can be difficult in the sense that the youth come in and they're very guarded, right? So they'll come in and you have to also take into consideration the population that we work with. A lot of these clients have had therapy their whole lives. A lot of these kids have started therapy very young. A lot of kids have had therapists, probation officers, the courts, CPS in and out of their lives. So they've learned to keep stuff private, keep stuff close. So you may not get an accurate baseline. So I think that to measure outcomes, how I view it is you build rapport. If you do not have rapport, you will not have an accurate baseline because they will not share. And so as you start working with them, as you start seeing, okay, as they start seeing that they can trust you, they start opening up and they start sharing baselines. They start sharing, this is what I'm actually feeling, right? And I think Carrie would second this, and you'd be surprised how many of these kids do not report any anxiety or PTSD. And then after a few weeks of meeting with them, after maybe a few months of meeting with them, they start to share, actually like this stuff really happened to me and I can't sleep at night, or I get flashbacks, or I like wake up in the middle of the night. And that's when you start realizing, okay, here's this, right? And so you do your care plan in the beginning based on what the client is reporting, because we can only go off of what the client is reporting. If you need to adjust care plans, if you need to adjust diagnosis, if you need to adjust stuff, you do that throughout the treatment. And that's part of outcomes. That's still part of outcomes because you're just adding to the story. And then you move off of that. So how you would measure outcomes at the end is that you would take these baselines, you would take their care plan, and then you just review with them like, hey, we've been working on anger for the past 6 months. What do you feel? Do you feel like you're working towards this, right? So it depends on how you write your care plan. So for anger, just for example, you could write in a goal of He has anger at these amount of times, he's gonna reduce it to these amount of times. You could also write a care plan where you talk about using coping skills. So it could be dependent on coping skills, like Carrie is able to use coping skills to manage anger in blank situations, right? Carrie will increase use of coping skills to this amount, right? So it depends on what you're focusing on, but that's how I would measure it. There's also different like for PTSD, there's different types of tests that they take, assessments that they take. And I think also another part is outcomes. It's a difficult situation because we have them for 6 months and then they leave, right? Some youth come back, some youth don't come back, some youth get rearrested, some youth don't get rearrested. So that's also a form of recidivism is also a form of measures, right? Outcomes. If we're working towards not getting recidivism, so then that is more of a long term, right? So then that's when you have to start looking into how many of these youth get off probation, how many of these youth re-offend, how many of these youth violate probation, right? And so that depends on what you as a clinician are looking at, or what the facility or the program is looking at. So I think outcomes can be measured in different ways by different people, right? So if you're doing more of a harm reduction, okay, they went out, but they didn't use substance, right? So it depends on what you're looking at. But I think overall, getting good rapport, getting baselines, seeing where they're at when they leave, recidivism, all those kinds of things.
I just had a big sonic boom here. I live by the Air Force Base.
Okay.
Okay, I don't have any follow-up questions. That was really thorough. Thank you. Okay, so we're getting to these. This is for you to kind of give us your global ideas, just how you think it's all working. What does the team or group contribute to the provision of direct services to the clients it serves? What are the chief limitations? And how would, oh, I thought it was how it would improve. Well, I would like to know how you would improve things at White Tech, but does it empower the clients? So just kind of globally, what's working, what's not working.
Okay, so let's start off with one. Which one do you want me to start off with? What does the team or group contribute to provisions of direct service to client and service? So our treatment team really does focus on bringing together everyone that's working with the youth in a different aspect of their treatment, right? Because this is a treatment facility, so everything is treatment focused and treatment led. So we have a treatment team once a week where we come together and we discuss each case on our caseload. So I'm on a specific unit, so I come onto the unit treatment team and we discuss the client. So I go into their treatment of behavioral health, right? So they're in these groups, they're doing this in therapy, they're doing this is how we're progressing. I'm doing family therapy, I'm doing this. And that's your time to advocate, right? So sometimes a youth may need something in particular and then you advocate for them in that instance. Probation will come in and they have a different perspective than I do because probation sees them a lot more, right? They're with them for basically 24 hours, maybe not the staff that is in the meeting, but they're always observing them. They're always taking care of them. They're always on the units with them. So then they give their report and school gives their perspective, right? School gives their perspective of how they're doing in school, how they're progressing. Nursing will do any medical stuff. And we all come together and we share that. And I may have a youth who comes in and I have good rapport with and he's respectful and engages in my session and is really good. And then that youth on the unit maybe is more defiant, maybe is more disrespectful, maybe is not doing everything right. Or it could be the opposite. I could have a youth that really doesn't like therapy, really doesn't want to be here, is not participating with me, but probation has a really good rapport with them. Probation is doing well with them, right? So it just depends. We have a code, but
Oh no, are you okay?
yeah, we're good. And so that's how we come together, right? And so the idea behind it is releases, right? We all put in perspective as to if this youth should be is ready to be released, if this youth completed stuff, right? So maybe probation has a youth who they think they're ready to leave, right? But I know that that youth is in my anger management group and they still have 5 weeks left, right? So then in my treatment team, I would basically just say, hey, I know that the youth has completed this amount of time, but let's remember he had 3 or 4 fights. And when, for just to add context, our anger class is called ART, Aggression and Replacement Training. But part of the evidence-based practice and what makes it an evidence-based practice for fidelity is if you get into a fight after week 3, you have to restart the program. So if they were in week 8 of the therapy and they get into a fight, they get removed and they have to wait until the current group is done. And then they rejoin the next one. And so at that point, you have to say, you know, I can't sign off on the behavioral health aspect of things because they have not finished all the programming, right? Sometimes maybe to get released or maybe they don't, but you, that's where you, in your statement, right? Because we have to write statements, that's what you write. You've completed this, but hasn't completed that. So that's kind of like what we do. We come together, we discuss the case, we talk about how we can help them. Sometimes maybe I'm able to get a hold of a parent, right? Or maybe I've been working with family therapy with a specific mom who maybe it's in Spanish and she has gotten good rapport with me and she always picks up the phone when I call her and I have good rapport and I'm able to talk with her. And maybe someone else is not able to get a hold of her or she's not as responsive, or maybe aftercare that has to go up. That's so probation aftercare, that's another aspect too of this, is because so I think that's another thing, Vicky, I think you asked in the beginning, like the diversity among the group, not necessarily diversity, but also every subsection has a lot of people that work with them, right? So behavioral health includes the substance use counselor, the therapist, the clinical supervisors, and the psychiatrist. And then there's people like then there's like probation, right? So probation has probation officers in here. So the ones that are on the day-to-day that are on the unit with the youth. Then there's supervising probation officers. Then there's aftercare probation officers, which are the probation officers that work with them in the community, and they come in here as well, right? So there's so many entities that are within those entities. But yeah, so that's, I guess, a long answer for all of that.
No, that was great. I was wondering, after how long is the anger management program?
So the actual group is 10 sessions, but keep in mind that if anger is something that they have to work on, then you work on it individually with them. So they get the group portion for 10 weeks, but then Carrie can tell you, you have boys that come in here to your session like, hey, I'm so angry this week. Like, this is what's getting me. Like, I can't stop fighting, or I can't stop arguing, or I just get so mad that I punch the wall. And so if anger is something that they're working on, you're working on it concurrently in your individual sessions. And just because they finished ART, the group, does not mean they finished anger, the treatment with you individually. And then you also have to keep in mind that a lot of the programs that we do work through have anger components to it. So moral recognition therapy, right? You're looking at your decisions, you're looking at the history of what you've done, you're taking accountability for what you've done, you're practicing honesty, you're practicing anger, you're practicing control, right? And so a lot of things can link back. So you just have to create a treatment team, or you just have to create a treatment that includes all that. And I think that also like helps you with your outcomes, going back to that previous question.
Stephen, any thoughts or questions?
No. Yeah, I don't have any questions right now.
Okay, that's a lot. I wish we could do like a
Yeah.
tour too. Okay, let's go on then. What are the chief limitations affecting delivery of services?
In what way?
I guess, like one thing I've talked about with Claire, my individual supervisor, is if we just talk about release for a minute, like when the youth get released, I feel like it's kind of like a hard shift. They lose their therapist, they lose their substance use counselor, they lose their probation staff that they might have bonded with a little bit, and it's like a hard like. So like, wouldn't it be nice if we could have a little more continuity with one of us from the facility? You know what I mean? Just to help them transition a couple weeks. I don't know.
I think that could help. But also they do have, we do offer services, right? So we still get, maybe it's not with one of us per se, but they are getting substance use referrals. They are getting an aftercare therapist. They are getting these things. But I agree with you. It might be nice if one of us can continue on to that transition. So something that I do to help with that is if they're getting therapy afterwards, I facilitate warm handoffs. So I do a Zoom call with their therapist that's going to take over their case within the community. And so I facilitate that, this is Carrie and she's going to be working with you when you get out of here. Miss Carrie is a great therapist. I've known her for blah, blah, blah. She works closely with us and she's been doing this. She works with our youth once they get out of here. So they know what you've been through. They know kind of that, like you just, you try to make it work. Limitations of team or group. I think maybe a limitation is that the constants in the treatment team are behavioral health and probation, but nursing tends to send like an email, and then school tends to not be present as much. They've been doing better. I think when you try to get all these people into one room, it makes it a little bit difficult. I think schedule. I think a limitation for all of this is limited. This limitation is time frame and people's schedules, right? So like one thing I can think of is when a youth promotes to the next level in the program, ideally we would want it to be like a promotion board where the people that are working with you are there to help you promote. But based on people's schedules, we are not able to be there for the most part. So I'm not able to attend my youth's promotions because of the schedule that I'm on. I would like to be there, and I think it's important for us to be there because we can add perspective. So instead, we fill out a form, a promotion ballot, where we write their progress or areas where they need improvement, and that gets reviewed. But I think that would be maybe scheduling things a little bit different might be helpful.
That's a good one. I like that. That's a good one. They have to promote through 4 levels before they can leave, and the promotion can be a really big deal. So yeah, whenever they get promoted, they come in, they're super excited, So. Okay, the last one, unless you guys have any follow-up questions or thoughts, how does it empower the clients? And any other thoughts you have on changes or improvements?
I think that a treatment team approach, I feel like, at least how I do it, clients are free to come to me and raise concerns or let me know what they need, and I tend to bring it up to treatment team. So I think that is a way for you to advocate, because it's the people that are working with them are together in a room. So if you have a youth who wants visiting with a child that they have, right, that's the venue to do it. That's when you say, I have a youth who has a child who needs to see them or this or that, right? If you advocate for that. So I think advocating is the biggest part for this.
Good point. That's true. That's true. I think it's also, we come from different frameworks. Probation is like a punitive approach sometimes, where we have more of the treatment approach, as Edgar said. And so Sometimes you really got to advocate that they don't get punished because they have trauma, or something like that. That's all the questions I have. If you guys have anything you want clarified.
I was looking at number 10 real quick, see what that one was. How would the team group members interact with each other outside of the group meeting?
Okay, this is a good question, actually.
Collaborate.
So
Oh,
our treatment team is once a week. That's the time we have set aside where we meet together and we have our session. But we communicate with each other throughout the day. And I think and actually, I think probation and us have a lot of communication because we need them in different ways than they need us, right? So in the sense of like, I come into the unit, I don't have keys to everything. So I need to ask them, hey, can I get this youth? Can I do this? Can I do that? So there's constant contact in that way. But say there's always communication. And I think this is for you guys as new clinicians, it's important to look at consulting as not just consulting with behavioral health. So yes, you consult with your supervisor because they, for a clinical judgment thing like that, when you need to do something like that, right? But consultation can also mean, you know what? I noticed that my youth was down today. He's sad. He's really sad. I don't know what that's about. You can consult about behaviors, right? You can I go to probation. I'm like, hey, how's he? And sometimes it's not even something you've seen, but if the youth are up in their room and they're not on the unit or whatever the case may be, I could go up to one of the staff and be like, hey, how has Carrie been today? How's Carrie been doing today? How's her mood like? I know that we're working on anger. Has she been angry lately? Oh, she has been. What's triggering her, right? You can explore triggers. You can explore anger. You can explore a mood, depressive symptoms. So you can explore that kind of stuff because again, they see the youth more than you do. So it's a collateral. So think of that as collateral, but you're also consulting with them because you're also letting them know, hey, so say a youth is suicidal, right? We can put a youth on a safety watch. We can put a youth to take them off of a safety watch, right? Can I put you on hold really quick? I'm getting a call.
hey, Carrie. I was just gonna say, I think this is pretty great. He did mention family therapy, so I'm thinking maybe that might be our theory.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. I'm not sure what to pick, but maybe you're onto something.
Okay, I'm back. So you consult, but you also it's collateral contact, but you also have to view it. I would view it as consulting as well because they're experts in their own way in their own area, right? So they are seeing their behaviors in a different light than you are, right? So you ask them and you go through that, right? If you're for example, I would not take someone off of a safety watch if someone was reporting that they were suicidal, right, the day before. And now I come in and I assess them and they're marking everything off like they did good. Like, I'm not suicidal. I'm not this, I'm not that. Like, I have no intent of hurting myself. I don't have a way to do it. I don't know how I would do it, right? You still go to staff and you say, hey, how has he been? How's his mood? Is he still sad? Like, he said he was really sad, this and this. He was cutting yesterday. Do you still see him cutting? Do you so there's all these behaviors that you get perspective from. So that all goes back to the interagency, to how you interact with team members. And that's like an extreme situation, right? But you could also just like weekly check-ins, like, how's the unit doing? What's the culture like on the unit right now, right? Is there a lot of conflict right now? Because you have those youth who don't work well with the conflict, who are withdrawn when there's conflict, right? So a treatment team is about really understanding perspective of everyone, understanding everyone's perspective. And I think that that is how we go about it, right? You're always consulting, you're always doing collateral with them, right? Maybe collateral is a better word to use than consulting, but you always have to gather that, right? Another aspect of things, if I have a youth who was expelled, right? And so here's the thing, and I think it's important because is this supposed to be about case management, Carrie, or this one is not about case management?
It's kind of like the part 2 of the case management. So yeah, it's still case management.
Yeah, so with case management, you also have to keep, when you're a social worker, like for example, me, myself here, I'm a social worker that is doing clinical. I'm a clinical social worker, right? But in social work, in therapy, in clinicals, you're always doing everything, right? If you know that your client has a specific need, you are equipped with the resources and the training to do the collateral reports, to talk to people, right? So if I have a youth who was expelled from high school and he wants to go back to school, I know that within the time that I'm with him, I can do therapy. So you contact the principal or the office assistant for school and you say, hey, this youth had an expulsion. Can I get the expulsion requirements to reinstate? So then you see, okay, this youth needs 15 hours of anger treatment. Okay, he's gonna get 10 hours of ART. There you go, I can send it off, right? This youth needs anger management. This youth needs community service. And so then you start going back to your treatment team and saying, hey, you know, he needs community service. Can you clean the unit a little bit more often? He needs this, he needs that. He needs maybe visiting with us, right? So you case management and interagency and treatment teams, they work in that sense. And I think that this is a perfect setting where you see that, because you're able to facilitate things for them, right? Because are you really doing your job if you know that this youth has all these things, all these needs, and you're not going to address them, or you're not going to try to address them, right? Because it's a lot different to get out of this facility and have, say you have 5 requirements to be reinstated into high school, and you can do 3 of those here. Why wouldn't you? Our jobs is to facilitate, then at that point, our job is to facilitate those 3. Right? Because you have knowledge of them and you have the ability to do them. So that is part of case management. That is part of the interagency, because I know that he can do 10 hours, he can do 60 hours of community service. He can clean the unit, right? He can clean my office, right? Because they have all the materials to clean, right? Back when COVID wasn't anything, you can facilitate them to go to the Humane Society where the dogs are. They partnered with us, and the youth would go and they would clean the yard in the back, right? There's so many ways that they can get the community service. So if you have knowledge of that, you communicate that to probation and you say, hey, I know that they have 60 hours that they have to do for court, but they also have 25 hours that they need to do to go back to school, right? So that's another way where you're using your treatment team. Different things like that, right? There's endless cases, right? If there's a dependency case, right, where the youth is a father and they need to clear a case plan for their dependency case for their child, then there's things you can clear, you start case managing that, you start planning, you start putting that into your case plan, right? So there's a lot of different aspects, and then you communicate that to the agencies that can help. Because if I can do the therapy portion and probation can facilitate the community service, and then school can facilitate the credits that they need, right? Then all 3 of us did a piece of it, and it's a lot different for a youth to get out there and only have to do two things than 5, right? So I think that is the main benefit of a treatment team approach.
So it's
that's
really,
super helpful.
yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, so and here's the thing, how do members or agency visit together or collaborate outside of meetings? We have a box, right? So we have a box where youth so a youth can put in a request to meet with us, but also a probation officer can say, you know what, I'm noticing some behavior that I'm a little concerned about, right? They're like, I'm not a therapist, I'm not trained in recognizing depression, or I'm not trained in this, but there's something went off. This is something I'm noticing that may not be good. They will call us, and they can call me directly to my line, or we have forms that they can fill out for us, and they'll just say, you know, had a bad phone call, very angry, was punching wall, or was disruptive in class. And so they'll inform us of behaviors on the unit that they're like getting a little alarm to go off in their head, and then they come in. And so they can communicate with us that way. I have youth who come in here and tell me things about medical stuff, right? Hey, I have a really bad toothache, and it hurts so bad, and I feel like I need to go right to the doctor. Or I've been having a stomach problem for the past 2 weeks and it's not going away, right? So I'm obviously not medical and I can't advise, but I'll be like, hey, do you want to fill out a nursing form? I can take it out for you, or do you want me to just talk to nursing? So then at that point you go back to nursing or medical and you say, hey, I have this youth, he's been saying he has a really bad toothache, it's really hurting, and this and that. And so that's all communication, right? Especially in a facility like this, because sometimes a youth may not know who to tell, or maybe they just tell the first person, right? So there's things like that.
So Edgar, do the guys get put on psych meds very often?
It depends on if they need the medication, and it depends on the psychiatrist. So the psychiatrist will prescribe them based on their need, and also history and all that. So it depends on the youth. I can't give you a number of how many people are on it, but we do have clients who are on medications.
I was just wondering too, with like aftercare, if they don't stay in touch with the doctor, that can be problematic.
So what happens is, if a youth is going to get released, the doctor writes a prescription and they get a 30-day supply. So the client's nursing or medical provides the youth with a 30-day supply of their medication, and they're provided with a discharge documentation that lets them know where to go get their medication. I know for me, I terminate with my families that I'm working with, and I let the parent know, hey, he has 30 days of medication. If he's going to want to continue taking medication, go ahead and contact this number right away, get an appointment for the next 2 weeks, and then so that there's not a halt in their medication. So there's that aspect of things. If they have aftercare, it's a little bit better because they're still in contact with a therapist, they're still in contact with someone who can refer them back to where they can go. So that's kind of what's been put in place, right? They get a 30-day supply. After the 30-day supply, they either they have a primary care or they go through the county.
Well, it seems like the team's really effective. That last question, was it effective? It sure seems like it, right?
I think like everything, there's areas that can have improvement. I think that for what this is, it is working. I think that could we improve? Yes. Because that's the ideal world, right? Everything goes in the ideal way. But yeah.
Culturally relevant and everything. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it was really a thorough interview, Edgar. Appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. Super helpful. Super helpful.
Yeah, definitely very informative.
Are you guys gonna graduate?
Yep.
Yes, sirree. Woohoo.
Where are your placements?
Where am I placed for internship right now? I just finished last week. I live in the Antelope Valley. Do you know where that is? Okay, so a lot of people don't. But I was at Bart's Altadena, also in a behavioral health. Had to take a crash course in being a therapist. I was shocked at what I got put into the deep end of the pool, but it was great.
It's good. It's good to get the experience.
Yeah.
What about you, Susan?
I'm with Adult Protective Services with the county.
Okay, are you trying to stay there?
No, I'm trying to find a different position. I want to try to do my licensing. But it was really good experience. I definitely would consider going back there after I get my license.
Okay. Um, you guys should order your transcripts already, by the way.
Yeah.
Order them, but click hold until degree posts,
Oh, thank
and you'll get them right away.
Okay.
And have your application filled out already. Have your BBS application. If you're going for licensure, have it filled out so that all you need to do is get your all you have to do is get your transcript and put it in there. Also pay for Cal State San Bernardino offers you a digital diploma, and it's actually really cheap. I think it was like 10, like maybe $5 to $15. I forget what it was, but every time that you need proof, you can just send them a link to that, and it'll say like this degree has been certified by, and it's like this certified agency.
Oh, okay.
You should be getting that from the registrar sometime soon.
Yeah, Edgar just finished all his hours, so he's about to get his license.
Oh,
Awesome.
Nice.
Congrats.
congratulations.
Yeah. Who's your teachers right now?
We have a new teacher from Singapore, Dr. Lim, Caroline Lim, who is fantastic for micro.
Okay.
And then did you have Dr. Tom Davis?
Yes.
Yep, we have him for 2 classes right now.
Oh, you have them for 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Miss Dr. Arcady? No.
I think I just
hear-
hired, yeah.
Oh, you did? Yeah, she's still there.
You guys were in substance use, right? I was in diversity.
Who taught your substance use class?
Professor Fierro.
Who's that? Just she, is she or he?
He.
Okay,
Yeah.
mine
He's
was
only been there 2 years, so
Okay.
he's,
my substance use counsel. Not counselor. Not therapist.
Professor.
Professor. She was the head of substance use at San Bernardino County. So I don't know if they stopped contracting her, or maybe you guys had 2 substance use classes.
I think she stopped. I think she went to Orange County.
Oh, okay. She lived over there, so it makes sense.
Yeah, that was a bummer. We kind of got a weird mix of people, I think, in our cohort.
we had, who is Dr. Joseph?
Oh, I
Can't
had him
remember.
for my freshman year.
Yeah,
My first year. He taught the 3 classes, the ones or 2 classes, developmental ones.
Yeah.
and Dr. Berrigan was our research professor.
I think Dr. Berrigan's class was the hardest one for me.
Ah.
Yeah, that's the only time I felt like I was gonna fail, because I hate math.
He took us through step by step. So you were a pioneer for us. I think he made it simpler for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
He just had another baby. He's off right now.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, is there any more questions you guys have for me?
Yeah, actually, I was curious how, I mean, I think it depends on probably on the client, but how involved are like the families, do they visit the client, do they participate in therapy? Or do
So-
they even, yeah.
So therapy is family therapy. Okay, I think that you have to keep in mind that we're still under COVID, right? So we're a lockdown facility. If someone comes in here with COVID, it affects us, right? Because we don't want an outbreak. So there's a lot of limitations on what we can and can't do. So we have visiting again, but we don't have family sessions in person. So we've been doing, since the pandemic started, we do family sessions over Zoom, which in my opinion has actually been a lot more accessible to families, right? Because we're Riverside County, not just Riverside City, right? So I can have a youth in here who is from India, I can have a youth here who's from Marietta. I can have youth here who's from Temecula. We could have youth that's from Jurupa Valley, which is right down the street, right? So Zoom makes it a lot more accessible. Also, it depends on the therapist, right? So we have a little bit more leeway onto how much family treatment we do. So technically, we only have to do 3 sessions of family therapy. I don't do that. I do monthly family sessions.
Mhm.
So that's just my approach. That's the standard that I like to set. I think that these youth are going back to their environments, they're going back to their families. They need to work on their communication with their families. They need to work on the conflict that exists with their families. They need to work on building a support system. They need to work on having their parents understand their coping skills. Their parents understanding that it's going to be difficult for them to transition back, right? So I sell it to my clients as, family therapy. We're going to do it every month. I schedule my family sessions a month in advance. So say that this Zoom call was our first family session and we're ending. I'm just like, thank you so much, Ms. Carey, for joining us in our family session. I'm looking forward to working with you while your son is here with you and your family. Can I schedule you out for the next family session? I know it's still like far off, but I get it on the calendar. And then there's follow-up, right? So that goes back to case management. You have to think about these families as just because you scheduled a family session for them does not mean that you don't call and remind them, right? That's still part of your job. That's still part of case management, right? Because maybe these families don't have, they don't carry around a calendar. Maybe they don't write things down. Maybe they're forgetful. And so I would not feel comfortable at the end of the day saying a family did not participate in family sessions because they didn't show up when I could have called them, right? Like when I could have called them the day before, I could have called them the day of and be like, hey, just a reminder, which I do, right? I mean, Carrie's been in the office when I call the families. You call them and you let them know the day before. Hey, just reminding you, we have a family session for tomorrow. Is your email still this, and this,
Mhm.
right? And then, yeah, okay, we have a family session tomorrow. I'm going to send you the Zoom link. You're doing your due diligence. And I think case management is doing your due diligence, right? It's making sure that the families that you're working with have everything available to them to be able to succeed, right? So that can mean giving them a phone call. And then case management is also calling the parent and being like, how do you hear them when they're talking with you on the phone?
Mhm.
How do you feel like they're progressing? How does their anger look like at home?
Right.
I see him here and he seems to be able to control it, but when someone says something to him directly, when someone cusses him, he flips out. What does that look like at home? Right? That's all case management because you're focusing, you're looking at them in their environment. You're looking at them in different environments and you're doing it through a collateral sense, right? Collateral is case management.
Right. Yeah. Good. Okay.
If you're terminating with a client and you're not asking the family what they need, right? If you're not asking the family like, hey, I know that Steven has been here for this amount of time and the history is he's been here before and last time he left he was using drugs the next day, right? He was the same day he was already on drugs. How do you think we can help set him up to not use this time, right? What resources does the family need, right? He ran away like within a week he was already he was living with someone else, right? What do we need to put into motion, right? Because it's not just the client and when you're working in an environment like this, you're working with the family as well. So it's important to recognize all those things.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Write all this down, Edgar. This should go into an intern manual, beginning clinician manual.
Well, if I train the intern next year, I'll help them out.
Nice.
Carrie wasn't trained officially under me, but I think I think I still trained her quite a bit.
Yeah, we got our schedule started to not line up a little bit. So I feel like I lost a little time, but anyway, I'm catching up.
I think of it, and if I could leave you with anything, it's that you're social workers, right? you're going to get to your new jobs where your jobs are going to say clinical therapist, your jobs are going to say a mental health professional, your positions are going to say mental health therapist, mental health clinician, right? But don't forget that you're a social worker that's doing therapy. So if you're a social worker that's doing therapy, then what does this family need? Right? What is the behavior? Right? Why is this behavior doing? Why is he doing? There's a reason for this behavior. It's a response. Is it a trauma response? Is it an attachment response? Is it this is how I've gotten my needs met response? Right? And going back to that, there's psychoeducation. I'm sorry, I'm just going, things come to my mind. Psychoeducation, you do psychoeducation and therapy, but you in a treatment team, you're also doing psychoeducation with those in a treatment team. You're also doing psychoeducation with them because maybe they don't know what depression is. Maybe how many of us knew, I didn't know this, but how many did us not know that anger and irritability is a symptom of depression? That boys react to depression with anger, maybe in a way that girls don't, right? So we see boys who are angry all the time, but how many times do we put depression to anger? Anger to depression. Maybe a lot of staff here don't know that. So you say, it's important to us to recognize too that anger is a symptom of depression, right? That can also be like when someone says attention-seeking behavior. I don't use that. I don't like that. It's connection-seeking. Why are they seeking attention, or are they seeking connection? Right? Are they acting out so that you notice them because they want attention, or are they acting out in front of you because they want a connection? Right? And so that's why you need to and you have these conversations with, in my case, with probation, in other cases with nursing, right? Not so much nursing, but you have these conversations with people where you inform why someone might react some way. And maybe not in this particular case, but like in general, like this youth is reacting this way because of this, right? Or there's different reasons. So all of that goes back to treatment, and all that goes back to all these things. So yeah.
Yes, awesome. You know what you'd be good for? I might write an email to Dr. Arcady. She had guest speakers for that diversity class that just kind of did what you did, just kind of talking like best practices for your population. You would be awesome for that. It was really cool. Yeah, they did like an interview, and this just reminds me of that. It's the same kind of thing.
Well, let her know. Tell her I was her former student.
I
I don't know if
will.
she remembers me. I was actually going to email her the other day, just like to see how she was doing.
Oh yeah, man. Okay, that's good timing.
But
Well,
yeah,
thank you so much. Thank you so much. I know you have a meeting coming up.
yeah. If you want to join your treatment team for your client, you
I
can.
guess I should. Our class got canceled, right, guys? 10:30 is
Yeah.
canceled still.
You guys
Okay.
are doing Zoom still?
No, it's in person, but our professor had to, I guess something came up for him, so we don't have class today.
You only have one class on Tuesdays now?
3,
So-
but for some reason they're all canceled today. So
So,
yeah, I'll jump in. I'll jump in.
you can go
Yes,
for,
Continue the training. Continue the training.
yeah,
Nice.
so 10:30 and you can be the first one. Did
Okay.
they send you the link?
Yes, she always does. Yeah, I got it.
Okay, perfect.
I wish
Well-
these guys could observe, but I know they can't.
No, confidentiality.
That would be so good. Okay. Anyway, thank you, Edgar.
But off of that, right? So interagency, I just have thoughts come up.
It's great. Thank you.
Treatment team is not just what was the word I was using?
Collaborative or
Collateral with other
Collateral.
agencies, right? Treatment team is also between therapists, right? I have a youth who I met with yesterday for a family session, and I wasn't on the unit. He wanted to meet with behavioral health. I wasn't available. Carrie met with him yesterday. It was a 15-20 minute session, but she was able to say, oh, he's having trouble because he has a family session coming up. He's a little bit nervous. But at the same time, I think he was trying to get out of class. So she'll come to me and she'll be like, hey, I met with your kid. He said he was doing this and he's having trouble with this. And then there you go, right? So I did collateral with her. That is treatment team. That is still case management, because just because I'm the assigned therapist, that doesn't mean another therapist is not going to meet with them. Similarly to Carrie's other youth that she has here. Sometimes he's meeting with all of us, right? Because Miss Carrie's here 2 or 3 times a week. And so he'll meet with me and he'll tell me this, and this, and then I'll go back and I'll inform that to Miss Carrie, right? Or I'll step into treatment team for Miss Carrie when she's not here. So think of it that way too. Interagency, like you still update one another, right? And maybe by the book's definition, I don't know what the book is saying, because technically maybe it's with another agency, but you're still, other therapists are still part of the treatment team, especially when you're on a split shift, right? So half of us work Monday through Wednesday through Saturday, and the other half of us work Sunday through Thursday, or Sunday through Wednesday, right? So you're every other, so you have to update each other. That's still part of it. So it applies there too.
Good point. Good point, good point.
Okay,
Okay.
but I think that's it. I don't think I will share anymore. I think you guys have got enough, and I'm probably so.
Lots of information.
Okay, I hope you guys have a good weekend and good luck with graduation. Are you guys having in-person graduation this year?
Yeah.
Say.
Thank you so much. See
You're
you later.
welcome. Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.